welcome to Scrappin with Sheri. It's time to continue on, and our next sketch page is page 28 in our sketchbook. This one again is another one-pager, and most of them are until we get nearer the back of the book, but I will be making it into a two-page. I want to continue on with how to figure out which papers work well for your pictures, and I also want to point out something to you about the sketches. I don't know if I've mentioned this before, but when you see all these circular designs on these sketches, that doesn't mean that your border has to be made with circles. It's just an idea that, hey, there's something that goes here. Maybe a larger border here, a smaller border here, and these two are kind of the same. It really doesn't mean you have to use circles on all these different things. So don't think that every page has lots of circle borders on them, because they really don't. This is a way to make it your own again. Even here, they used a laser cut border for a spider web, which I think is really neat. So let's go ahead and get started in this. Now, because I am making it a two-page spread, my intention is to do the left-hand page first, go ahead and finish it all the way out, and then I'll do the right-hand side just to show you how I would make those two mimic each other. And in picking out papers, again, I'm continuing on in this trip in Mesa Verde. So my first thought when I'm looking is I've got these beigey brown rocks. I've got a lot of greenery with the different trees. I did pick up a postcard that showed one of the places that we toured. Again, the beigey brown rocks. Lots of beigey brown rocks, a little bit of reddish in there. And then I've also got the book that tells about this particular place that I want to include. Yeah, it's a lot bigger than a photo, but I still want to include it. So in the Leave Nothing Behind collection, I found this paper. Is it rocks? No. Does it match exactly? Well, no. But look at the way it makes the feel of my pictures. It pulls in the beigey brown color. It pulls in the greenery. And I think it's perfect for these particular pictures. Now, what's on the back of that? We've got some dirt, some grass, just some different things. Yeah, that side could probably work just as well. But I love the way this beigey brown on here works with my pictures. So that's what I'm going with. I also went ahead and pulled this orangish color because I felt like I might could use it to pull out some of the orange in this postcard. There's a little bit of orange here, not as much, but I felt like I might need some good contrast. And this is a nice contrast to this particular paper. Again, it's from Leave Nothing Behind, so I know that it's going to coordinate well. I've pulled a couple of every sheet since we're doing a two-page spread. And I pulled this wood grain, which will end up being my background page because I wanted a dark contrast between the background and the inner workings of this page. So let me set my photos and my book aside. Let's get the page done, and then we'll decide how to put everything on. So we have our big background. There is a border here that I'm going to work with in just a minute. And there's a strip here. But what I want to work with first is my biggest part of this. There's this big part that's going to be this piece right here. It's 11.5 by 8 3/4. So let's go ahead and cut that piece down to 11.5 by 8 3/4. Now, you know I like doing that math, and I want to just cut off on this side so I don't have to pull the big arm out. And I've got to think this through, because if this is going to be 11.5 across, I want to cut off this side. I want this stripe part going up. So I need to cut 1/2 inch off of this side right here. Now remember, your 1/2 inch line is your first line past your cutting mat. So that's at 11.5. And then I need to make this side 8 3/4. Now 1/4 would get me to 9. So I need to cut off 3 1/4 to make this an 8 3/4 page. I hope that math was okay with you. And if that bothers you, pull the arm out. Get it to 8 3/4 that way. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to do this. Just make it work for you. Some people are more mathematically challenged than others. That's okay. We're all different. We all have different skills. So we've got that piece, and we know that that's going kind of here. When I pulled this orangey brown, my intention for it was to be this wider strip here, this 2" by 11.5. So I think I'm going to go ahead and cut that and put it up there, and let's see what it looks like. And this too has a stripe that goes up and down. So to make sure that it's going to go up and down, I'm going to turn this paper sideways and cut it at 2 inches. And I didn't want to cut off the 11.5 first because I don't want the whole page cut down. So now I just need to cut off that 1/2 inch here. I may use that paper for something else down the road, so I don't want to go ahead and make it smaller all the way. All right, let's lay these on. I'm going to pull this mat out of the way for right now. And let's see what we've got so far. Now, I'm going to go ahead and tape these down just because I think it's a little bit easier for me to work with it when everything's not moving. And you can see the contrast with my background paper. I chose a pretty dark background paper for the purpose of having this contrast. And I'm trying to kind of center some things because I do want to leave room for my my borders. I've pulled some borders, but you know what? I may not use them. They may be too much for what I've got going on this page. We'll just have to look at that and see. I guess the one thing that I try really hard to do with most of these sketches is to make the background similar. I guess when I look at it, I see it in layers. And I see the furthest background, the next layers. Then I see borders as a next layer. And I just kind of work my way up from there. So we've got our outer background, this big background area. We've got this big stripe here. They're showing a border here. And I want to show you what I had pulled for that border. Now, I could cut a border, but I felt like this was a nice piece to go there. It's going to give me some color up top. It brings in this green pine looking stuff. So I am going to add that border there. And then I also found another one for along the bottom. Now, I don't really want a big border here because I want a lot of places for my pictures. But I found this wood look, and I felt like right along the bottom edge, that might be nice. I think I'm going to put this brown up so you can actually see the distinction there. So let's go ahead and tape those down. Pull out my mat and my repositionable tape for that top ferny border because it's got a lot of little holes in it. We haven't talked about repositionable tape in quite a while, but if you have any kind of borders that have a lot of see-through areas, this repositionable tape is great. It comes off in tiny, tiny little dots that I'm sure you probably can't see. It sticks to your border. It also sticks on the silicone mat where there are holes. That's why I use the silicone mat with it. And it's just a great, easy way to use borders. I used to skip by borders all the time because it was so hard to stick them down and it frustrated me to no end. And you can tell I use borders all the time now. And let's stick our wood grain along the bottom. Now I can use my regular tape for that because it doesn't have holes in it. I tend to use my repositionable tape pretty sparingly. You don't have to. I mean, you could use it for everything if you want. I just don't use it that way. All right, so look at this. We've already got the background page laid out pretty much. Now, there are other embellishments, titles, different things on here. But let me go ahead and lay out my photos and the things I'm going to use on this page. Because this is the introductory page, I almost feel like this book needs to go here. And I like this because it tells, hey, this is at Mesa Verde. that could kind of serve as a title as well. I wouldn't necessarily need to pull a title block down. You can tell how that really fades into my background, though. I've got to fix that. And then here's a sign that tells that this is the Cliff Palace Tour and water. Do I really need that? No, because I have Cliff Palace here. So I'm going to ditch that photo. No need to be redundant. And I think I'm going to pull in this picture here. And maybe pull it, which way? I think I'll pull it in this way. So on this particular page, I don't have a photo going sideways except for this. I don't have anything I've cut down small here or here, and I don't have an oval, but that's okay. And very likely may not make that work with those particular photo sizes at all. We'll see on our facing page what we choose to do with that. Now, the problem I'm having here visually is the fact that this and this really fade into my background. Because this photo is already matted in the white, and I really like that. I'm going to pick up that white and matte these two as well. So, let's grab some white paper. And this is going to be on the edge of my page so that I can open this on top of my page protector. So when I stick this on the white to matte it, I am putting it right over on the furthest edge. I'm not leaving any border on the back side of it, just around these edges. And I'm just leaving a thin border. I don't need a lot. I just need something to help it stand out against that background just a little bit. And then we'll go ahead and matte this postcard as well. Now, there is information on the back of this postcard, and I could take that off, type it up, all of that. But this same information is in this booklet. So I decided it was not necessary to take the time to type that up and make it a journaling area. Now, I will do a little bit of journaling on one of these pages, but I'm not sure exactly where yet. So I'm just going to hold off on that until I get both pages done. You can see I've scooted this near the bottom. I'm trying to keep as much of this orangey color as I can there. And I do feel like on this, I want to slide it over to the outside edge some and do some journaling here maybe. So I'm going to cut this down, cut off the white, and then reattach it. You've seen me do that before. Because of the way the little village is set up under there, I'm going to cut it off on this edge over here. And then just add my tape onto the colored area here. And stick my photo right back down so that the white is right back on there. And I'm going to scoot it over a little. That white is a little thick on that outside edge. And I don't feel like I need quite that much white border. And then I'm going to trim this side down to make it match a little bit better with that white space. Now, there are all kinds of rules about matting and when to matte and when not to matte and all kinds of things like that. My thought process is if it overlaps, I always like to matte. I think if you don't matte, the pictures kind of run into each other and it's just too much visually for me. And here you can see I'm still going to go off the side of this. But I think instead of cutting this down and rematting it, I'm just going to let it go off the side and I'm going to trim it off. So let's look at how that looks. Scooting this over onto that background paper. And then my main goal here is not to cover up the Mesa Verde, the words there. So as I scoot this over, I'm just making sure that I'm not covering the words. And when I cut, yes, I'm going to lose a little bit of the village there, but it shows up in this other, in the postcard, so it's okay. I'm looking at this back right here, and boy, that's crooked, which means on the front is crooked too. It's hard to tell because this border is not a regular shaped border. It's not a straight border. It's got a little bit of movement to it. All right. So we've got the left-hand page done. Let's go ahead and do the right-hand side and see how they work together and make sure of our journaling spot, which I think is good here, but you know, that's also pretty to show off some of the paper. I'm gonna have to tape this down just a touch more right here on this edge. So page 2, let's go with it. Pull all the pieces and parts. So we've got our background. We've got this one that we cut 11.5 by 8 3/4. My 11.5 is going sideways, so I need to cut this 1/2 inch strip off here. Eight 3/4 is going to be my height. So I'm going to cut that off this direction. And go ahead and lay that out. And then we had this piece, which was 2 inches by 11.5, because it sits right on top of the other piece. I'm just cutting that 1/2 inch off there. Now, in taping these down, I want to make sure that I get them pretty even with the page that was facing it. So let me move my trimmer out of the way, and I'll just line these things up to make sure that we get the pieces and parts even on here. It's going to be a little bit harder to do, specifically because I've covered up so much of it, but we'll make it work. And I can kind of see where that orangey brown goes, and then I can tape that right below it. Another question that comes up all the time is how much tape to use. I think you use whatever you're comfortable with. I use as little as I can, and then sometimes when I start putting the pages in the album, I'll feel like something's just a little bit floppy, and I'll go back and add more. I do tend to use more on the sides that are going to be on the outside edge where the page protector is, because I just feel like I want to be sure that those outside edges as you're flipping the pages are secure. Now let's add our borders back to our blue mat for this one and our repositionable tape. And when I stick these on, I'm just kind of sticking this ferny edge right up to the top edge. We don't want to take up any more space than necessary. And when I look at it, yep, it's looking pretty even. I feel like this is a little far to the right and maybe not quite straight, which kind of means my orange is probably not quite straight. All right, that seems better to me. And then we'll stick the little log border right along the bottom. And again, I'm just lining this up against my other page. This is the main reason why I work on my pages outside of my album, because it's so much easier to line up all these bits and parts if you don't have your album to contend with. You don't have that bulk to worry about. Now remember, this log border is kind of erratic. It's got some thicker places and some thinner places. So what I would like to do here is make sure that my brown spacing along the bottom is the same, even if the top part of my log is not exactly even. When that's in my book, you're not going to be able to tell the difference. So let's go back to our sketch. And let's see the way they've laid out the pictures. Now remember, my pictures don't go the correct direction. This was our guide, who was actually from this group of people. And because I've got more space down here, instead of doing this particular layout, I could do something like this, and I could cut down these and just put those right along here. I do like showing the greenery in here, and I probably will center that and then put my guide over here. I like this look. And now I'm looking, because I still have this sign that I was looking at before. I could hang that up here and make that another title block on that side of the page. And I think that's what I'll do with that. So I'm not doing my pictures at all like the sketch here. I had even pulled out the oval cutter, and I could go back and make an oval journaling box here, which would be a good plan. So let's think towards that plan right now. And let's go ahead and cut these, put these pictures onto the page. Now, because I really like the definition of this outside border, I'm going to attach the picture to that inner piece right there rather than the outside border. And because these are pre-matted, it's no problem to overlap. I am going to overlap this guy right here who is causing a problem in the edge of my picture. If that happens to be you, I'm sorry. But I want to be sure that he's covered up so as not to detract from what's going on in my photos. And that's where, you know, typically you just crop them out. But because of the way this page is and the way my matting is already pre-done, I'm just going to cover them with that white mat. Now that leaves me some space in here that I don't really like. So I'm going to scoot them all in towards the center just a little bit, which gives me a little more border around the outside edge. Yes, you know, sometimes you pick it up, you move it around, you see what works, you do it again and again, and that's okay. I could have pre-measured this in advance, and then I would have known that, but what's the fun in that, right? And this is taking me a lot longer to even up than I thought it would, and part of it could be the border on the developing. Part of it is just me, I'm sure, because when I'm looking, that is so crooked to me. Let's pull out this handy-dandy ruler and do something with it. How about that? And what I'm doing is just lining this up against the bottom of that border. I'm checking to make sure this line here underneath that orange area is pretty straight. And I'm just going to butt these pictures right up against my ruler. To me, that is the best part about the thickness of this 12-inch zero centering ruler. I mean, aside from the fact that you can do zero centering, is the fact that it's thick and you can just butt your pictures right up against it and put them in place. All right, that feels much better. Should have done that from the get-go, but sometimes I'm a little hard-headed. All right, and then we've got this sign that I'm going to use my personal trimmer and cut down a little bit. Oh, I hate cutting it down because I love the white matting. But you know what? We'll just add it right back on. I do want to leave the green in the background there. A little bit of that green. This is still a little big, so I'm going to cut down on the top as well. Now, how do we go back and add this? You know, in this particular case, I think it's just easier to cut it off. I mean, we've only got one more white strip showing. We'll cut it off. We'll pull some white paper and just mat it independently. So I had this white scrap left over. I'm just giving it a really thin border. I don't need anything major, but this is going to serve as a title block here. So I've pulled my titles across using memorabilia and photos. I didn't have to use sticker letters or anything extra. And anytime we travel, I try to take pictures of any signs that designate what things are or something special about those things, because that does save me a lot of time with journaling. And I'm going to just pull that right down there just a touch. I think I'm not going to use an oval on this particular page. I think I'm just going to go back and add a small journaling box here. And in doing that, I'll have room to journal, but I don't take away from any of the embellishments, any of the pictures, anything that we've got going on. I feel like an oval here would just detract at this point. So these are my 2 pages minus the journaling. I'll do that and add it on so you can see that in the final layout photo. But this is page 28 in our sketchbook. We're about a quarter of a way through the sketchbook at this point, so we are moving right along. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you'll watch us next time. Until then, happy scrapping.